I spent 5 years paying off a $330,000 mortgage to keep our family home. Then they took my name off the deed and gave it to my brother. You don't have kids, he does, Dad smirked. I just sent clause 4.7. A week later, they called 6 times. I replied, not my house, right? I always thought being the dependable one, the quiet fixer, was enough. I was wrong. The moment my dad looked me dead in the eye and said, you don't have kids, Aaron. He does. I knew my world was about to shatter, and that I had to rebuild it myself, brick by agonizing brick. So, my name's Aaron. I'm 33. I'm that guy, the oldest, the quiet fixer, the one who shows up with a toolbox and pays for the pizza. You know, the pizza nobody ever bothers to Venmo you back for. My day job is with a hospital system, which means I'm a pro at long forms, even longer nights, and untangling other people's messes. I basically run on black coffee, and I hardly ever drink. And for reasons I still can't quite wrap my head around, I genuinely believe that just being dependable, being there, would eventually be enough. My family. Well, Mom collects recipes and grudges with equal fervor. Dad talks like he's running a Fortune 500 company, but the only spreadsheets he ever actually opens are the ones I built for him. Then there's my brother, Nate. He's 30, got 2 kids, and a permanent, vaguely charming, I'll figure it out expression. Me? No kids. Just a 2009 hatchback with a dent on the passenger door and a drawer full of meticulously labeled warranties. So, picture this, Sunday dinner. Same chipped blue plates, same roast that always tasted vaguely of thyme and smoke alarms. I'd helped set the table because Nate was on a call, which, let's be real, meant scrolling on the porch. Mom was in her apron. Dad was carving the roast with aggressive precision. I was actually having a decent conversation with my niece about her volcano project, promising baking soda for next weekend. Then Dad cleared his throat. Not a cough, a clearing, like a judge about to deliver a verdict. Let's be adults, he said, his eyes drilling into me. We made a decision about the house. My stomach dropped. The house. Our grandparents' place. The one with the sagging porch I'd literally jacked up last fall, the roof I'd patched, the furnace I'd replaced in February, in a blizzard, while Nate was sunning himself in Miami. Dad set the knife down, folded his hands like a pastor in the pulpit. You don't have kids, Aaron. He does. The silence that fell over that table was deafening. Nate tried to look neutral, and failed miserably. My niece dropped her fork with a clatter. My nephew just kept chewing, oblivious. Mom swooped in, a smile plastered on her face that held absolutely zero warmth. It's a family home, she chirped. Family means thinking about the future. Whose future? I heard myself ask, the words tight. Her smile vanished. That tone, don't start. Nate, finally, piped up. It's not personal, man. It's logical. Logical. That word hit me like a physical slap across the face. I just stared at the gravy boat, because if I looked at Dad, I knew I'd say something I could never take back. My hands went from burning hot to freezing cold in an instant. We'll talk later, Dad added, completely casual, like he was just rescheduling a meeting on my calendar. Eat before it gets cold. I cut a piece of that overcooked roast and forced myself to chew. My mouth was bone dry, but my brain? Oh, my brain was already racing, meticulously sliding every little favor, every single yes I'd ever given, into place like receipts in a folder. I didn't argue. Not then. I just nodded, swallowed, and asked my niece about her volcano. But the first, jagged crack had already opened. And it all started with those 6 words I couldn't stop replaying. Asterisk, you don't have kids. He does. Asterisk now. If you ask them, they'll tell you I always loved that house. That I insisted on taking responsibility. That I volunteered. The truth? What I did was sign. I signed because 5 years ago, my dad called me at 11 at night, his voice laced with that specific panic, the one he uses when the walls are closing in. Buddy, he'd said, we're in a bind. That bind turned out to be a massive $330,000 refinance. Grandpa had died. The estate taxes were due, the old loan was a balloon, the rate was horrific, and the place needed serious work. Temporary, Dad promised. We just need your credit to secure a better rate. We'll take you off the paperwork next year. This is for the family. Next year bled into 5. I handled everything. I built the spreadsheets, compared a million rates, argued with underwriters about ridiculous appraisal comps, hunted down pay stubs Mom had scanned sideways. I sat through endless calls while Dad wandered off to find his reading glasses. I even burned my PTO for inspections. I crawled through a dusty crawl space to photograph insulation because the lender demanded proof. I explained escrow to Mom. Then I explained it again. I brought donuts to the appraiser. I paid all the application fees out of pocket. I stayed up late, reading the deed, the note, the riders. All the boring parts no one else ever bothers with, especially the boring parts. That first winter, when the furnace died, I paid the contractor's deposit because Dad's card declined. He Venmo'd me $300 with a thumbs up emoji and a more later. Later never arrived. When the roof leaked, I lined up the roofer. When the basement flooded, I rented the industrial fans. When the property taxes escrow account ran short, I wired the difference myself. I told myself it was fine. We were almost there, always almost there. Every single holiday, someone would inevitably bring up legacy. Mom would tilt her head and say, your grandmother wanted the house and the family. But the family always meant my parents and Nate's kids. Me? I was just the guy with the tool belt and the credit score. Nate's contribution? Mostly vibes. He'd show up at the tail end of a workday with an iced coffee, lean against a ladder, and declare, you're a machine, man. Then he'd vanish because the kids are melting down. When the gutters needed clearing, he'd put on gloves for 5 minutes before suddenly remembering a podcast he absolutely had to finish. When the painter quoted too high, he'd argue about color swatches. Money was always the quiet, insistent hum underneath it all. You make more, Mom would say when I hesitated. You don't have daycare. Dad liked to frame things as loans that never had a return date. Float us till Friday, he'd say on a Wednesday, and Friday would stretch into 2 months. And the language. God, the language. The way a request subtly warped into a duty, just by the tilt of a sentence. You're so good at this, Aaron. You know how to talk to banks. You're so detail-oriented. You're the only one who understands the forms. I did. I really did. I carried that stupid file folder with its plastic sleeves and sticky tabs, kept every single email. I learned to speak like a loan officer because no one else could do it without getting defensive. I kept the air calm while Dad made jokes about signing his life away, and Mom fussed over the notary's pen, and Nate sent selfies from the trampoline park. I told myself it was worth it when the refinance finally closed. The rate was decent, the payment manageable, the house would be safe. We'll get your name off the deed after a year, Dad promised. And I believed him. Because I desperately wanted to. Because the alternative felt like admitting I was financing a story where I was nothing more than an extra, a supporting character in someone else's happy ending. The months melted into years. Every single time I dared to bring up restructuring, or, getting my actual name off the hook, Dad had an excuse. Market's weird. We need 2 more pay cycles to show stability. Let's wait till we pay down the kitchen. That kitchen, by the way, was Mom's Pinterest dream that somehow ballooned into $12,000. Guess who the contractor called when Mom conveniently didn't pick up? Around year 3, those small cracks started to deepen, hairline fractures in what I thought was solid ground. The insurance policy started arriving addressed to me and Dad. Why is your name on everything? Mom asked, her voice sharp with irritation, as if I'd snuck it onto the paperwork in the dead of night. Then the HOA sent a violation about the fence, straight to my email, my problem, my headache. Dad just forwarded it with a one-word "can you?" and nothing else. When I tried to say I couldn't make a repair one weekend because I had a conference, Mom let out a sigh, so loud I swear I felt the air shift through the phone. Must be nice, she'd said, dripping with passive aggression. Some of us don't get to pick when the house falls apart. In year 4, I covered yet another escrow shortfall. You'll be paid back, Dad texted. I screenshotted that thread. I filed it. I never said why I saved these things. I just did. Then came the small, stupid moment. The one that, looking back, should have been a screaming siren for where this was all heading. It was my birthday. My own birthday. Mom posted a photo of Nate's kids in front of the house with balloons. The caption read, "So grateful for our home and the future we're building for our grandbabies." No mention of me. No tag. Just a comment from Dad. Couldn't have done it without family. And then, the kicker, Aunt June replied. Nate really stepped up. I just stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. Then I set it face down. The bitterness was a physical taste in my mouth. By year 5, I'd had enough. I asked point blank, let's sit down with the title company. Get my name off. We said 1 year. Dad waved his hand, dismissing me. We'll figure it out, he said. Don't push. Push, I repeated, disbelief creeping into my voice. We're not made of money, Mom chimed in from somewhere behind him. You know Nate just started a new job, and the kids need braces. Then the real kicker. And why are you making this so transactional? Transactional? The irony was a bitter pill. Because I was the transaction. 2 weeks before that infamous Sunday dinner, I'd stopped by to drop off some HVAC filters, because, naturally, no one else remembered the right size. Dad was pacing on the phone, Mom was folding laundry. I reached for the mail stack, just trying to find a utility bill for my reimbursement spreadsheet. That's when I saw it. A thin, manila envelope from the county recorder's office. I didn't open it. I didn't even need to. I'd worked in those systems long enough to know the weight of an official stamp. Mom's eyes darted to mine, instantly. Leave the mail, she said, a little too quickly, a little too sharply. I put the envelope down. I went home. I made coffee. And then, I reviewed my scanned PDFs. I reread the note. I reread the deed. And I found the part most people skip. The part 1 had highlighted in yellow 5 years ago, because, yeah, I'm the kind of person who highlights in yellow, then goes back and adds tabs. Clause 4.7. Asterisk transfer and assumption. Unauthorized conveyance constitutes default. Asterisk I didn't sleep for a week. Not really. Then Sunday dinner happened. And Dad said the quiet part out loud. With a smirk, no less. You don't have kids. He does. It wasn't a decision. It was the end of a long, slow, carefully orchestrated reroute, where I'd paid every single toll, only for them to rename the road I was on. I didn't yell, and honestly, maybe that disappointed them. People who are so used to your compliance often get loud themselves, just so they can call you dramatic when you finally dare to say no. After dinner, Dad tried to wave me into the den, like a manager calling an employee for a quick chat. I stayed firmly in the doorway. Here's the thing, he started, all casual authority. We've executed a deed of gift. It's still the family house, just formally under Nate. Makes financing the future simpler. My fingers tingled with a surge of adrenaline. You conveyed title, I said, my voice dangerously calm, while I'm still on the note. Dad just shrugged, dismissing me. Don't be so legal about it. Nate, ever the smooth talker, leaned against the doorframe, hands in his pockets. It just makes sense, man. Kids need stability. You said you didn't even want to live here. You were correct, I replied, my gaze level. I don't want to live here. I pulled out my phone. Tap, tap. Screenshot. It was clause 4.7, in its clean, boring font, my yellow highlight almost glowing. I dropped it into the family group chat. For reference, I typed. The read receipts popped up, one by one. Mom typing. Dad typing. Nate typing. Mom fired first. What is this? Your mortgage. I typed back. Ours. Dad called. I declined. He called again. Declined. The third time, I answered and put him on speaker. Aaron, he said, his voice dripping with that patient, condescending tone. We talked about this. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Clause 4.7, I said, cutting him off. Any transfer without lender consent constitutes default. You recorded a deed gifting the property to Nate. That's a transfer. Silence. Then Dad laughed. Thin. Brittle. You don't understand how these things work. I do, I countered. Nate, from the doorway, spread his arms wide, a smug look on his face, like he'd just landed a checkmate. You wouldn't tank your own credit. You're not that dumb. I'm not tanking anything, I stated. I'm clarifying boundaries. Mom stepped in, chin held high. After everything we've done for you. What, exactly, have you done for me? I asked, genuinely curious to hear the well-worn script. Raised you, she snapped. Fed you, supported you as an adult, I said, my voice rising slightly for the first time. I carried this house. Dad's voice turned to steel. Listen, this drama ends now. You will not cost us the home over a technicality. Then undo the technicality, I said. He glared at me, seething. You're ungrateful. There it was. The word that turned every single favor into a heavy, unbreakable chain. I ended the call. And then, I texted one more screenshot. It was my draft email to the servicer's compliance address. Subject line, populated. Attachment labeled, asterisk recorded deed. Transfer without consent. PDF, asterisk I didn't hit send. Not yet. I just wanted them to see the message I had never, ever sent before. A quiet, undeniable truth. I can be quiet, and I can still move mountains. The group chat exploded. Mom, how dare you? Dad, we'll talk in the morning. Nate, you wouldn't do this to your niece and nephew. Aunt June, family handles family issues privately. I put my phone face down. I washed my plate. I said goodbye to my niece, promised the volcano for next weekend. And then I left. In the car, I stared at my own reflection in the windshield, the porch light glinting like a pale, distant moon. I wasn't shaking, which surprised me. I thought I would be. Instead, there was a low hum in my chest. Not anger, just pure, undeniable clarity. I went home. I opened the file folder labeled House Legal, and I moved that draft email into a new, ominously named folder. Lines. Monday morning, 8:03 a.m. I hit send. The email went straight to the servicer's compliance department. No theatrics, no emotional accusations, just facts. I am co-borrower on loan X. On date, a deed was recorded transferring title to a third party without my consent or lender approval. Please advise per section 4.7 regarding default and remedies. Attached, the PDF of the recorded deed. I CC'd the generic inbox, and, because I know how internal queues work, the escalation mailbox. I even added the property insurance agent, because, surprise, the named insured had technically changed. I attached the escrow analysis showing all my top-ups, and a tidy, itemized list of every repair I'd funded, complete with dates and amounts. I didn't editorialize. I didn't accuse. I documented. It's the only language institutions truly respect, because it's the only one they actually read. At 8:19 a.m., Dad called. I let it go to voicemail. 8:22, Mom called. 8:23, Dad again. By 8:30, I had 6 missed calls and a text from Nate. Bro, what are you doing? At 8:41, the servicer responded. We have open case hashtag A41129 for review. Please allow 1 to 3 business days. At 9:05, the family group chat exploded. Mom, your father is sick to his stomach. Dad, you're making a fool of yourself. Aunt June, is this about jealousy? Nate, this is actually illegal harassment. FYI, I muted the thread. I went to work. I fixed a Citrix outage, answered tickets, and ate a protein bar at my desk. Around lunch, my phone started buzzing with a frequency that felt less like a notification and more like a fire alarm. 36 calls in 1 hour. A new personal best. I sent a single text to Mom and Dad, copied Nate. Not my house, right? Silence. Then, a fresh flurry of rage. Dad, you're going to owe apologies when this is over. Mom, your grandmother would be devastated. Nate. Asterisk, don't pretend you care about the family. You just care about control. Asterisk, the servicer called me at 2:17 p.m. The rep's voice was neutral, professional in that way that instantly registers as power if you've ever worked a help desk. Mr. Hale, we received your documentation. She went through a checklist. We confirmed the deed. We confirmed I had not consented. We confirmed no assumption had been processed. Then she read from her script. Per your deed of trust, an unauthorized transfer is a default event. Options include acceleration or requiring a corrective deed. We typically begin by requesting the transfer be reversed within a specific time frame. So you'll contact them? I asked. Yes, she replied. We will send a formal notice today. When I hung up, I felt a sharp, unexpected twist in my gut. Not guilt. Something between grief and intense relief. Like peeling off a long stuck bandage and seeing the skin underneath, raw but finally, blessedly clean. By dinner, the texts had completely changed their tune, shifting from angry demands to desperate bargaining. Mom, let's just fix this without involving strangers. Dad, asterisk, we'll put your name back on. Simple, asterisk Nate, asterisk man, come on. The kids are crying. You happy? Asterisk I typed, deleted, typed again. I finally landed on this. You removed my name. You explained why. I heard you. Now hear me. I will not carry what I do not own. At 7:48 p.m., Aunt June called, an emergency intervention. Families don't call banks on families, she declared, as if it were a law of physics. Families don't record gifts behind people's backs. I shot back, without missing a beat. They weren't behind your back, she insisted. They did it without my consent. While I'm still on the note, I corrected her. That's behind my back and in front of a notary. That night, Dad sent a ridiculously long text about sacrifice and how much he'd given me. I scrolled past his list of little boy baseball games, a science fair project, and a set of tires in college. I distinctly remembered saving up for those tires myself, working at the campus help desk, paying cash after he'd promised to cover them next month. Memory is a funny, often inconvenient, thing. Tuesday morning, a courier arrived at my apartment. A letter from the servicer, a notice to cure. 30 days to reverse the unauthorized transfer, or face acceleration of the entire loan. A copy had, of course, gone to the house. At 9:11 a.m., Dad called from a different number. When I answered, he skipped hello. You put our home at risk, he raged. No, I said. You did. He launched into his full court press. Nate's kids need stability. You don't have kids. This is the obvious path. You're being technical. Technical is what got you a good rate. I said, my voice cutting through his. Technical kept you out of default 3 times when escrow went short. Technical fixed your furnace, your roof, and your fence. Technical is why the house still exists to transfer. And technical, I added, taking a deliberate breath, is also why you can't just deed it away like a fruit basket. He was breathing hard, practically panting. Undo this. You undo it, I countered. Follow a corrective deed. Put title back where it was. Then we talk about next steps. My next step is getting off the loan entirely. We can't do that right now, he yelled. Then you can't do this right now. He hung up. By Thursday, the family had a new group chat, charmingly nicknamed Real Family Only. My aunt, in a moment of utter obliviousness, added me by accident. I screenshotted comments like, he's always been jealous and he wants control because he's alone. I promptly left the chat, but kept those screenshots. More lines for my folder. Friday, Mom tried the soft approach. She called, crying, said she hadn't slept, that she was nauseous. She even managed to say the word, please. I listened. I didn't rescue. Aaron, she whispered, her voice fragile. You're punishing us. I'm protecting me, I stated simply. What about the children, she wailed. I'm not their bank, I said. Their parents are. There was a long, wet sniff on the other end. Then her voice, suddenly cold and sharp, cut through the phone. You know, she said, this is why no one wants to build their life around you. I could have said 1,000 things. 1,000 angry, bitter, heartbreaking things. But I said nothing. I just ended the call. Sunday, exactly 1 week after that fateful dinner, a different courier arrived at 10 a.m. A new deed. A corrective deed. Title returned to its rightful, previous state. No apology note. No fanfare. Just the cold, hard legal correction. 5 years of we'll fix it later, resolved in 4 days. Under the kind of pressure they actually respected. I set the new deed beside the old one, took a photo. I texted Dad, Mom, and Nate. Received. Next step, removing me from the loan. I'll send you a calendar invite for a meeting with a loan officer. We will do it together this month. Dad replied with a single word, fine. Nate replied with a paragraph, a furious diatribe about how I'd humiliated them, how the kids had cried. I didn't reply. I just booked the meeting. Here's what I'd learned. Boundaries don't announce themselves with fireworks. They look like emails with attachments and calendar invites that explicitly say non-negotiable. They sound like the silence you make where you use to fill the air with solutions. 2 weeks later, we sat in that sterile bank office. Me on one side of the small table, Dad and Mom on the other. Nate, predictably, showed up late with the Starbucks. The loan officer, in the same slow, clear voice I used with people who still can't figure out how to print to PDF, explained the options. Refinance to remove me, or sell the house, or keep me on and agree, in writing, to never, ever mess with the title again, and to take on escrow funding in full without my contributions. Dad, faced with the numbers, chose practical reality over his bruised pride. They refinanced. The rate wasn't as good as it would have been last year, but that was not my emergency anymore. I watched them sign, and I felt something deep in the center of my chest, something that had been coiled tight for 5 agonizing years, finally, completely unspool. The new note did not have my name. Mom still couldn't meet my eyes. Nate tapped his pen on the table, a frantic little desk drumline. It was over. When it was all finally over, the loan officer asked, "Anything else?" And I said, "Yes." I slid a single-page document across the table. "Reimbursement agreement," I stated. "Itemized. You can pay in installments. No interest. I'm not a lender, but I am done subsidizing." Dad's jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. "We don't have, then pay when you do," I interrupted. "Or don't. I'm not sending reminders." Nate snorted, a derisive sound. "You're really sending us a bill?" "I'm really ending a pattern," I said, my voice steady. They signed. Not because they agreed, not because they suddenly saw the light, but because that room was a place where signatures happen, and because my silence made it crystal clear I would not negotiate another inch. I drove home with my windows down, the air smelling like cut grass and hot pavement. I thought I'd feel triumphant, victorious. I didn't. I felt level, like a wobbly table that finally found its perfect, folded napkin. I bought myself a new drill set, one with a case that clicks closed with a satisfying thud, like a perfectly ended sentence. I returned the spare keys to their house. I muted the family chat permanently, and I made a new one, with friends who actually show up with casseroles and texts that say, "Proud of you," without adding a but. A week later, Mom sent a photo of my niece's volcano. The caption simply read, "It worked." Nothing else. I looked at it for a long time. Then I replied, "Nice eruption." No heart emoji. No volunteering. Just a small, human acknowledgement that didn't cost me a single night of sleep. I found a therapist who laughed kindly when I described Clause 4.7 as my Roman candle. Together, we built a sentence, a shield, that I can now say out loud whenever I feel those old hands trying to tug at my sleeves. I will not carry what I do not own. It fits in my mouth now. It changes decisions. Sometimes, I drive past the house on purpose. The porch beam looks straight. Someone planted hostas. The windows catch the late sun, glinting beautifully. It's pretty. It's also not mine. If my chest tightens, I breathe. And I remember, I did what I said I would. I kept it standing until the people who claimed it could finally take their hands off my back and put them on the pen. Last night, Dad texted me a YouTube link to a guy fixing drywall, with the words, "We could use your skills." I typed 2 words, "Good luck." Then I put my phone face down and turned back to the skillet where onions were sweating towards sweetness. The sizzle sounded like a tiny, ordinary freedom. And here's the moral. The part one wish someone had told me when I first started printing forms and naively thought the right paperwork could make people kinder. Technicalities? They're just boundaries that someone else didn't think you would ever enforce. Love is not a loan. Family isn't a deed. And the sentence that finally set me free wasn't cruel or loud. It was a screenshot, a subject line, and one very powerful text.